The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello everyone, and welcome to this month's Pensionmark webinar series where we will be discussing practical ways to save more. We appreciate all of you taking the time to join us today. A few items to go over before we get started. First, in order to ensure everyone has the ability to hear the information presented by our guest speaker, everyone will be on mute during the webinar. Second, please feel free to write in any questions you have using the Q&A tool on the webinar menu. And at the end, we will take some time to go through these. And now I'd like to introduce our guest speaker, Patrick Kellogg. Mr. Kellogg is a retirement education consultant with MassMutual. For the past 20 years, he has taught and motivated thousands of people to understand their investments and take positive steps to build for themselves a solid financial future. A firm believer that we get the retirement we choose, Patrick also recognizes that that everyone is unique and marches to the beat of a different drum. So in his spare time, Patrick enjoys playing the drums and enjoying life with his family in the Rocky Mountains. Thank you for being here, Patrick, and now I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you very much, and thank you to everybody that's logged in today. What we're going to talk about today are some important ways to save more without making a big sacrifice in your everyday life. And as we go forward here, let's see, get this to move. So far, there we go. So today we're going to talk about how you can make an impact in your savings without having to make a big sacrifice. We don't want it to ruin your everyday budget and how you live your life now, but we want to make sure that we can all save enough for retirement. So we'll look at some different ways that you can find some opportunities to save and how you can set actionable goals to get you where you need to be in retirement. So let's take a look at whether or not we are saving enough. Every person is a little bit different, and everybody's got a different style and a different savings rate. Let's see if this can go forward here. There we go. These are some average retirement savings rates for people all across the country and all sorts of different retirement plans, how much people are saving right now. And most people are doing a pretty good job of saving in their 401k plan. They're contributing somewhere between 3 and 5% on average. But did you know that on average, in order to have enough money to get you through retirement at an acceptable lifestyle with enough income to last all the way through a 20, 25, 30-year-long retirement, it might actually take a savings rate of 10 to 12%. So while most people are doing somewhere around 5%, and you can see by age, generally speaking, people that are in their 20s are saving around 5% for retirement. People that are in their 30s are saving around 6%. People in their 40s are saving around 7%. And then people start kicking it up a little bit as they get closer and closer to retirement. But most of us should be saving somewhere around 10 to 12% of our income if we want to get to retirement and have enough money. And actually, these numbers that we're looking at are a little bit misleading in the fact that these are just the people that are contributing to a 401k plan or a retirement plan of some sort. But not everybody is contributing to a retirement plan. And when you take a look at the whole picture, the overall picture in the United States, the savings rate for retirement is pretty bleak. 36% of American workers have less than $1,000 saved for retirement. Now that does include some of the people that are brand new to the workforce in their first year of working, but overall that's a pretty low number. 69% of workers have less than $50,000 saved up for retirement. And that includes an awful lot of people that are in their 40s and 50s and even 60s. Only 11% of Americans have saved more than $250,000 for their retirement. So when you take a look at it and you take a look at how much retirement might cost us, that's looking kind of bleak. Now, how much might it cost us? There are all sorts of different studies out there. People have calculated this a number of different ways. One fairly well-known study estimates that we're going to need somewhere around 10 to 11 times what our last year's salary is going to be. In other words, the salary that we earn that final year of working right before retirement, whatever that happens to be, you want to multiply that by 10 or 11, and that will give you about the size of the nest egg, that's one rule of thumb, of how much money you should have saved up to start retirement so that you can take some bit by bit income out of that and be able to make it last all the way through your retirement. So in other words, if your salary the last year that you work is $50,000, you're probably going to need to start it with a nest egg of around $500,000 or more. If your salary when you end retirement, or right at the end of your working years, right before retirement, if your salary is $85,000, multiply it by 10, you're going to need somewhere around $850,000. Now, regardless of what everyone else around you might be saving or what everyone else in the country is saving, your goal should be to replace somewhere between 60% and 80% of your last year's salary. And even more if you plan to have an active retirement where you're doing a lot of additional things, maybe traveling, seeing the sights. And this may seem like an impossible challenge. So we're here today to hopefully help you find some ways to achieve this goal. Now, some people think, well, I'm just going to invest a little bit more aggressively. And my suggestion to you is that you can't simply invest your way to retirement. The markets are unpredictable. They don't give us consistent returns all the time. They don't always give us a 7% return every single year. It'd be great if they did, but they're volatile. Some years it's much higher returns than that. Some years it's much lower. Some years it's a negative number. You can't invest your way to retirement. You have to save your way. You have to make sure that you're saving enough. I think that's what we're seeing on these screens. Now, I'm sure all of you are thinking, well, I've got plenty of time to save for retirement. You know, it's so far away. Maybe some people plan to win the lottery. That's a great retirement strategy. Others are counting on Social Security. Others are counting on maybe their children will pay for everything. All those are kind of risky strategies. Now, we know that part of your retirement income will come from Social Security. But let's face the reality, it probably won't be enough. The average Social Security benefit in 2013 was only about $1,261 per month, a little bit more than $15,000 a year. Last year, it was about $1,284 a month. So it went up a little, but not a whole lot. So depending on your lifestyle and your situation, Social Security might be enough to cover about 30 to 40% of your living needs. The remaining balance, 60 to 70%, will need to come from your retirement savings. And that goes back to that 10 or 11 times what your ending salary was. That's how much savings we're going to want to have. So that's why it's so important to start saving as much as you can now. So let's figure out some different ways how we can help you get there and maybe find some extra money to spend. Where could we find an extra 2%, and how much might an extra 2% make a difference? How much difference can that make? Well, obviously it depends on how much you earn. Let's say you earn $35,000. 2% of that would be about an extra $13.50 per week, or maybe the cost of a couple movie tickets if you go to the matinee. If you earn $50,000, then 2% of that would be about $19.25 per week. That would be the cost of dining out maybe once a week. $65,000, 2% of that would be $25 per week. Cut back on one impulse buy and you pretty much save that $25 per week. Most of us can find some of these things to cut back on. And there are many other things that we can cut back on as well. But how much could that add up to? Well, let's say right now I'm saving 3%. Let's say my salary is $50,000. I'll just use this middle one for an example. Obviously, your salary might be higher or lower. So 3% of $50,000, that means I'm saving about $1,500 per year right now. Assuming we earn 8% rate of return on our investments. And again, we don't know for sure that we could do that. The markets fluctuate, but let's just say on average I earn about 8%. 25 years from now, if I start today doing that, 25 years from now I could have about $118,319. 30 years from now, it could be about $188,536. 35 years from now, $296,236. Obviously, the longer I've got to go until retirement, the more years I've got to contribute, and the more years I can compound and hopefully grow my investments over time. So that's pretty good. 3% can add up to a pretty good amount of money later on down the road. That's how big my nest egg could be. Well, what if I bumped it up by just 2%? Can that make a difference? Let's see if it can. So again, these were our original numbers, Here's my $50,000 salary. I was putting in 3%. In 25 years, that could be worth $118,000. Well, what if I bump that up to 5%? I started contributing 2% more. So now instead of putting in $1,500 a year, I'm putting in $2,500 a year. Instead of $118,000 25 years from now, I could have somewhere around $197,000. Instead of $188,000, I could have around $314,000. Or in 35 years, instead of a little bit under $300,000, I could have $488,000, approximately. Obviously, these are hypothetical. These don't represent the performance of any particular investment. But over time, that 2% can add up. It has the potential to significantly impact your retirement savings. So it can make a difference over time. So let's take a pop quiz. We just showed you a few things that you can cut back or substitute. So let's see. If you were 22 years old today and you started investing the daily cost of a cup of coffee, and let's be very conservative. Let's say you can go out and get a cup of coffee for $1.49. And you can, just depending on where you go and what you want to put into it. So a cup of coffee, $1.49 a day, every working day. Instead, you would put that money into your retirement plan account. Starting at age 22, $1.49 a day, how much would you have by age 67? Would you have $41,899, $12,392, $155,983, or $79,843? What do you think? The answer is $155,983. Again, starting with zero, starting at age 22, 260 weekdays per year, earning about an 8% rate of return. A little bit, a small amount, can add up to a pretty hefty sum by the time we get to retirement. Okay, here's another question for us. Let's say you're 35 years old today, and you invested half the cost of buying your lunch each day. So I could go out to the restaurant and I could spend, $8 on a lunch, roughly. But instead of doing that, I brown bag it a couple times a week. So I'm saving about half of my lunch money, about $4 each day, into my retirement plan account. From age 35, how much would I have by age 67? Would it be $53,000, $241,000, $155,000, or $71,000? And the amount is $145,565, approximately. So keep that in mind, and if you want to learn more about this, if you want to play a game that's right along these lines, if you go to massmutual.com/getretiresmart, you can find out more and run through some of these calculations. Now, let's talk about your needs versus your wants. Before making that next purchase, ask yourself, is this something that I really need? We need to first attach meaning to our money. Saving money then becomes apparent and it seems doable. Goals give your money purpose and direction. So examine what your specific short-term goals are. Maybe you're saving up for a vacation. That's a short-term goal, something that you're going to be spending that money on in a year or two. Also think about your long-term goals. Maybe it's sending your child to a private university. Maybe it's retiring at age 60 or age 65. So part of this exercise is figuring out who you are and what's important to you and what are the things that truly make you happy. So before making that purchase, ask yourself, is this something that I can't live without? Is this something that will really make me happy? And how does it affect my other goals? Forget what your neighbors are up to. Forget how many different toys you see in their driveway. Focus on your needs first. But don't deprive yourself. Occasionally we're going to treat ourselves to one of our wants, and that's something we should do from time to time. But keep in mind that goals, good goals, great goals, each and every goal that we have carries a price tag. So we have to make sure that we're thinking about that. Now, we tend to apply the theory for needs versus wants only to major purchases, but we shouldn't overlook the little expenses. Because let's face it, sometimes we spend money frivolously. We're all guilty of making impulse purchases from time to time. $1 here, $5 there. We visit the ATM maybe at the beginning of the week. Before we know it, we're back at the machine on Wednesday, unaware where that money all went. A survey was done not too long ago that tracked our mystery spending. It's the money that we lose track of each day. And it amounted to more than $20 per week That's more than $1,000 per year. So change your mindset about what a budget is. Rather than thinking of it as this rigid, strict plan, think of it as a strategy to achieve your goals, a personal roadmap that you can always change. Use a budget to help you track where your money has gone. It'll help you manage your future spending. Make sure your budget is flexible. Make tweaks as life changes, and have your budget mirror your goals, and you'll have an action plan that addresses what is important to you. Now, another option is, if you want to have some major effects in budgeting, get a budget buddy. Budgets come in all shapes and sizes. Everybody's got different goals, but in order to manage your budget well and achieve your goals, whether it's to save more, spend less, pay off debt, or maybe all three, these tips will help you. Having a budget buddy, sometimes it helps to team up with somebody. Maybe it's your spouse, maybe it's a significant other, maybe it's a friend. Each of you are going to devise your own individual plans, but you can put your heads together, seek guidance and encouragement from each other as you help. That'll help you get closer to your goals. Just like it helps you to exercise with a friend, maybe to keep each other accountable, sticking to a budget is a lot easier when you have the support of someone else. Another tip, stick with cash as much as you can. And I know that's tough to do. A lot of people are just used to swiping for everything. You swipe that card here, there, and everywhere. But the best way to regiment your spending is to use cash. Unlike using a credit card or even a debit card, using dollar bills physically limits you from overspending. Studies have shown that we save 20% when we use cash instead of credit, because psychologically it's just more painful to use cash. When we have to hand over those green pieces of paper, we don't like it. We want to hold on to those. And that works in our favor if we're trying to save more money over the long run. Another thing we should be doing is tracking our spending. Use free online tools. You can go to mint.com. That's one example. There are lots of them out there on the website or on the internet. You can use a simple spreadsheet. Just track where each and every dollar that you spend goes, even the small stuff. Just like when you go on a diet and you track your calories or you track your exercise, it's important to even track the small bites here and there because they add up. Same thing with our small purchases. And overall, with our budget, you want to make sure that you're not spending more than you're earning. You want to make sure that your burn is less than your earn. In other words, am I keeping within my budgets that I can save some of that money as well? And then as much as possible, try to automate your payments. Automate everything that you can just to ensure that you don't fall behind on payments. And you'd never want to do that, obviously. That can cause your balances to balloon, and that will ding your credit score too. You might even get rewarded in some cases for automating payments. Automating student loan payments, for example, gets you an interest rate reduction in many cases. Well, what about managing debt? So far we've been talking about your future spending habits. Now let's talk about addressing your financial situation because of some previous spending. Everyone has some sort of debt, and it's the good, the bad, and the ugly. Good debt, well, that's considered debt that has probably a relatively low interest rate, such as a mortgage or a student loan, and usually it was for something that in the long run should be beneficial to us. Owning a home is going to be beneficial to us. Having a college education should be beneficial to us. Bad debt, that's debt that has high interest rates, like credit cards. And a lot of times, not always, but a lot of times that was used to buy things that are going to depreciate in value. Ugly debt, well, all debt can turn ugly after a while, after being late, missing a payment deadline, especially student loans. You don't want to do that. Student loans can turn ugly if you suddenly aren't able to afford to pay them back, particularly private loans, because they don't offer a whole lot of flexibility in terms of repayment like federal loans do. Student loans can't be dismissed in a bankruptcy unless a judge allows it, which is very, very rare. So big question, should I save for retirement or should I pay off debt? Now, pure mathematics, if we're just looking at it from a math standpoint, that says it makes sense to pay down debt first because your debt likely carries a higher interest rate than just about any savings account you can find nowadays. But the math doesn't always speak to what is personally and financially smart. If you were to lose your job tomorrow, wouldn't you regret not having a savings account? Ideally, we want to be able to save and pay down debt without sacrificing too much. If you have absolutely no savings whatsoever, I would say make that your priority. Make sure you've got some money saved up for an emergency. Pay the minimums on your credit cards and allocate as much of your paycheck to savings each pay period until you have at least a couple months worth of expenses shored up. And from there, scale back your savings just a bit and do more to address your credit card debt. Increase payments to the card with the highest interest rate first, or maybe the lowest balance, just to pay that off and then move that payment over to the next debt. Start paying more than the minimum as soon as you're able to. And then once your debt is all paid off, and it's a great feeling when you get there, pretend that it's still there. I mean, have a celebration, pat yourself on the back, because that's a great thing to be debt-free. Obviously, other than the mortgage, that's going to be more of a long-term thing. But when your consumer debt is paid off, just pretend that you still have it. In other words, all that money that you've been putting towards paying off the debt, start moving that over into savings so that it will grow for you. You've been able to survive, without that extra income in your everyday budget, so keep surviving without that and move it over into something that will grow for you for the future. And you can manage your debt. If you're feeling trapped by it, here's some ideas to help reduce your burden and maximize your saving strategy. Some of these you may have tried, some of these you may not have thought of. Sometimes you can play credit cards against each other. Take advantage if somebody offers you a 0% transfer. That might save you hundreds of dollars in interest in a year. If you have a lot of cards, consider consolidating them into one. That's less to manage, fewer checks to have to write. Just be cautious about balance transfer fees. You don't want to get dinged with that, obviously. Negotiate some payments. For all your utilities, insurance, whether it be home insurance, car insurance, whatever, other fixed monthly payments, call those providers. Ask them for a discount. It's just as simple as that. Say, what can you give me? Is that the best that you can do for me? You'd be surprised what you might save. Negotiating and letting those providers know that you're considering the competition and you're considering moving your business elsewhere, sometimes that's your best tool in earning back some money and applying it to your budget. And also, you may want to think about, if you're not already doing this, prorating your utilities. If you've got a full year's worth of payments on a utility, maybe it's your gas or your electric, so the gas company knows what you spent last year, they can prorate next year's payments. And in other words, they can give you an equal payment each and every month. That just helps you manage your budget a little bit better so that you're not hit in those months, when the gas bill is much higher. Consider refinancing. Interest rates are still fairly low. They're not as low as they were a year ago. If you haven't done it yet, and if you're able to, you might be able to save hundreds of dollars each month by refinancing that mortgage. If you can cut a few $100s, be smart, invest part of that into your retirement account. That's a painless way to boost your savings for your future. Remember, if refinancing means adding more years to your mortgage, that might not be the best idea. That could cost you more in the long run. You don't want it to extend the loan to close, or even worse, into your retirement. You don't want to still have a mortgage payment when you're retired. Also, obviously, you want to consider the fees about refinancing. What's the real return? If it costs you $3,000 to do the refinancing and you're going to save $20,000, that's probably a good deal. But if it's going to cost you $3,000 and it's only going to save you $4,000, that's not looking as good. In some cases, you can roll the fees. You can roll the fees into the new loan so that there might not even be an upfront cost to you. Then another thing to do if things are getting really bad, if your debt is completely out of hand, and if you need some coaching, consider entering a debt management program offered at a nonprofit such as the National Foundation for Credit Counseling or Money Management International. Credit counselors will work on your behalf to reduce your monthly payments to a more manageable level, and that can help get you out of debt slowly but surely. You can also consider free online sites like readyforzero.com. That can help you come up with a debt reduction plan that you implement on your own. Here are a couple more ways that you can boost your overall savings. Again, we want to make sure that we've got enough money for retirement. Starting early, that's the biggest thing that you can do, the best thing you can do. Every year you delay in saving for your retirement, you could be losing out and losing a pretty significant amount of money. Look at that hypothetical example to see the difference that just 10 years can make. If you plan on changing employment or leaving the workforce at some point in the future, any money that you save now and that you keep invested, it can continue to grow tax deferred in your retirement plan. In this example, the $24,000 additional savings resulting from starting to save at age 30 versus waiting until age 40 to begin saving, and the additional 10 years those savings are invested would have resulted in an increase of about $315,000 in the size of your nest egg by the time you get to retirement age. So starting early makes as much sense as anything else that you could do. And then if you can't save the maximum today, and again, most of us can save quite a bit in our retirement plans. The government lets us save quite a lot. The amounts keep going up each and every year. If you can't save the maximum today, well, don't worry about that. Just commit to making small regular increases over time. For example, plan to defer 1% more every year, or maybe every other year. You know, if you're doing 5% this year, commit. If you can't do more than 5%, that's fine, but maybe next year make that commitment that January 1st you're going to bump it up to 6%. And the year after that, maybe 7%. Pretty soon you'll be up at that 10 to 12% range. You probably won't miss it today. Usually it's not a huge sum of money and it won't make a huge difference in your take-home pay, but you'll definitely thank yourself tomorrow. And take advantage of surprise cash. Doesn't happen all the time, but once in a while might be something that you can take advantage of. If you're struggling with debt, put half of any and all surprise money. Maybe you get a bonus. Maybe you get a pay raise. Maybe you get a really nice tax return. Put half of that toward your debt. If your goal is to save more, put half toward savings and the rest toward rewarding yourself.
Thank you so much, Patrick. We really appreciate you sharing your time and your knowledge with us today. And we'll go ahead and start addressing some of the questions that have been filtering in. Please remember that if you have any questions, you can submit them using the Q&A tool on the webinar menu. And as always, you can reach out to your dedicated service team at Pensionmark for any plan-specific questions. Our first question, what's the difference between a 401k and Roth IRA?
Great question. Well, first of all, a 401k is something that's offered through your employer. It's an employer-sponsored retirement plan. And probably the most unique thing about that is the fact that it's automatically deducted from your payroll. You know, if you sign up for the 401k plan, if you're eligible, you can enroll in the plan and automatically have those payments come right out of your paycheck and go right in the 401k plan into basically the menu of funds that are available in your plan and start saving for retirement. Usually, well, just about always, the 401k plan allows you to put that money in pre-tax. So you're saving money on taxes now. The money gets to grow inside the 401k plan tax deferred. And then when you get to retirement, then you'll pay taxes when you pull the money out at whatever your ordinary income tax rate is. So the 401k allows you to save money on taxes today by putting the money in pre-tax, growing it tax deferred, and then you'll pay taxes on it eventually. A Roth IRA, and I think that's what the question was, the Roth IRA, the IRA part stands for individual retirement account. So it's something that you would set up on your own. It's not something that your employer offers, but you'd go to a financial advisor, a bank, basically any financial company will be able to help you establish a Roth IRA. You can put less money into a Roth IRA than into a 401k plan. You can put in $18,000 basically into a 401k plan, and I honestly don't remember the number, if it's $5,500 right now into a Roth IRA or $6,000, it's somewhere in that range. The difference on a Roth IRA is that money that you're saving, it's after-tax money. It's not pre-tax. You're not saving money on taxes now. But with a Roth IRA, if you leave the Roth alone, you don't try and take any money out for at least 5 years from the time that you start the Roth and at least until age 59 and a half. Then when you're taking withdrawals from the Roth 401k at retirement, if you play by those two rules, you get to withdraw the money income tax free. You don't have to pay taxes on your growth. So it's a way to save money on taxes in the future rather than saving money on taxes now. Now, some 401k plans do offer a Roth feature. Not every 401k does, but some 401k plans have adopted a Roth component, so you can basically get the same tax treatment, but it's still inside your 401k plan through where it's automatic payroll deductions.
Thank you, Patrick. Our next question is it good to have both pre-tax 401k and post-tax IRA?
Well, on the post-tax IRA, I probably wouldn't do post-tax if you don't have to. If I were doing an IRA and I wanted to use after-tax money, I would probably put it into a Roth IRA rather than just a regular. You can do what's called a non-deductible IRA, and basically you're putting in after-tax dollars and you don't get to deduct those contributions. Is it good to have both pre-tax 401k and Roth money? I would say for most people, yes. If you've got a fairly long time to go until retirement, more than 10, 15 years or so, if you're in a fairly low tax bracket today and you think there's a possibility at least that taxes might be higher in the future, then the Roth can make some sense. You just have to kind of weigh that out and balance it out to see, does it make more sense to save more money on taxes now? If you're in a higher tax bracket today, you're probably going to want to lean your contributions a little bit more towards a pre-tax contribution into your 401k plan. The other thing about a 401k plan, and I should have mentioned on the last question, is some employers, obviously not everybody, but some employers might do matching contributions in a 401k, and you always want to make sure that you're contributing enough to get the full match if your employer offers one.
Thank you, Patrick. Our next question, do these estimated saving figures assume a mortgage payment, car payment?
That's a good question. I'd have to go back and look at some of the specific ones. A lot of times, yeah, they do, because everybody pretty much needs to be saving for a mortgage. Everybody needs to have some sort of vehicle. But yeah, what we're basically saying when we're talking about the estimated savings figures, how much you need to save for retirement, we're just talking about simply the retirement portion of that. You should be saving somewhere around 10%, 10 to 12% of your pay for retirement if you want to get to retirement. And what we're hoping is that when you get to retirement, you've got the mortgage paid off, and hopefully you've got a paid-for vehicle. So you really want to make sure when you get to retirement that you don't still have a lot of major debt hanging over your head. Make sure that you've got that paid off. And that's when we were talking about that with refinancing. You don't want to make sure that, or you want to make sure that you don't still have a mortgage payment. So I'm not sure if that exactly answers that question, but that definitely touches on some of those things.
Great. Thank you so much, Patrick. At this time, it doesn't appear that there's any more questions, so this will conclude our webinar session. Again, thank you, Patrick, and thank you, attendees, for your participation. I hope everyone has a great day, and we look forward to our next webinar series with you. Take care.
Great. Thanks.